Peas on Moss is brought to you by Kimberly Schaub, a culinary scientist turned business developer. Over the past 4 years, the audience has downloaded episodes over 40,000 times, and we have 1,500 impressions across the website and a host of social media platforms. Will you consider contributing to the show to help keep it on air? Donations through Patreon help to offset the cost of web hosting, editing, and producing the various Peas on Moss offerings, from podcast episodes to videos, and every little bit helps. From corporate advertisement to sponsored content and private contributions. Reach out to me on peasonmoss.com for details. Chef Wiley Bates III is one of my favorite guests and wise mentors who shines as a lighthouse in a crazy career ocean. From sharing his culinary Olympic experiences to choosing to walk away from his chef-centered fame to focus on his family in pursuit of balanced work, Chef Wiley is a badass. You will learn more about him by talking to others than by asking him to talk about himself. That said, he agreed to be a keynote speaker for one of our Research Chef's Hustlers Under 40 networking calls to share his career and his mindset of what to do when the shift hits the fan. We jump into this episode in the back half of his description of his career and then a Q&A with fellow hustlers. It's such a good recording, so I am sharing the whole thing over the next 2 episodes. Our overall conversation was nearly 2 hours long, so I'm really grateful to Chef Wiley for his generous gift of time.
My title is When the Shift Hits the Fan. And you might want to just double check to make sure I actually said that right. When the shift hits the fan, it's not the 4-letter word, it's the 5-letter word. And that's kind of what I want to make sure I'm delivering on to today is the SHIFT hits the fan. When it starts to shift in your career path, when it starts to shift in your stratosphere on where you are and what you're doing today, how do you pivot and shift with the business to make sure that you have the competitive edge? And that's kind of what I wanted to share with you on tonight. But pivoting back to, again, where I came from, I joined Starwood, and then I was recruited from some executives who left Starwood Hotels in White Plains, New York, to open up a brand new hotel company called the Nilo. Nilo was ultra cool. Imagine the W on steroids with like club life and just, it's all about younger business people coming in and having fun, also making sure that you're engaging the local community. And I had a blast. Absolutely hard work. It was a 6-day, 7-day a week. I was the second person ever hired for the company. I worked out of a trailer for the first 3 months. We opened up and it was just full throttle up since then. I got to a point, again, when the shift hits the fan, I had to find a balance between being that absolutely hardcore career-minded guy who had a cookbook deal, who had opportunity to actually launch a personal brand where I was doing cooking, like a cooking channel, not the food channel, but it was more of a local. And I stepped away. I had a young son, and I needed to balance. And so my shift was, dare I say, I was up Shift Creek to decide whether I was going to be an awesome dad and or be an awesome, executive within our hospitality industry. I chose to find the balance and try to be good at both. And so that was my shift. But and to that end, when I was in the hotel business, I got sat down by our executive team and says, listen, congratulations, we're promoting you to Director of Food and Beverage. You are now going to wear a suit and tie, and you are now going to manage 220 employees with a $22.5 million revenue stream on an annual basis. Congratulations. I go, I'm sorry, you don't understand. I like the chef coat, warm pair of slippers for me. I love what I'm doing. They're like, no, you don't understand. Congratulations. You have become the Director of Food and Beverage. And as a matter of fact, we're going to move you into talent acquisition and mergers. When we start buying more properties, we're going to send you out to deliver the vision and what have you. And I go, no, you don't understand. I want to be in the kitchen. I love it. Food doesn't talk back. It always does exactly what it says it's going to do. It always looks like it's supposed to look. And I like it. And they were like, you don't understand. Anyway, I lost the fight. And so that shift and that pivot led me to move into research and development, which is I absolutely feel terrible that it took me this long to find out that R&D is amazing. And so I spent 80% of my career to this point actually in the trenches, in a chef coat, on the line, expediting, working through, again, as a food and beverage director, only to find out like, oh my God, if I had a mentor that could have told me about research and development way back when, I would have pivoted quick, fast, and in a hurry. And so I am absolutely excited and ecstatic that I had the opportunity to get my feet in the door. And so I'll share a final story, and then we can get into kind of some of the pivot points that I wanted to talk about when the shift hits the fan. I was absolutely honored by a lady that I will always honor on situations like this. Her name is Sharon Webster Tolan. Sharon cut her teeth as a collegiate basketball player for Oklahoma. She was phenomenal, made it to Final Four in the whole nine. She also was a food scientist. She cut her teeth at McDonald's. So she's in the Chicagoland area, and then she was promoted out and up and out, and she chose to move over to Yum Brands. At that time, I was actually teaching culinary arts at a local community college here in my area here up in North Dallas. And I was like sitting up, a little bit tired. My class load was horrible. No one wanted to take summer classes. I'm like, okay, I got to figure out how to pay property taxes. This is going to be a shift show. So I had applied at 2 a.m. I saw it pop up. I applied at 2 a.m. I'm home on my day off, and I'm mopping the floor. And I literally had this interview mopping the floor. Like, there's no way in hell I'm going to get an opportunity in research and development as a global executive chef. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get an opportunity to be in a multi-billion-dollar global brand like Yum Brands as the global executive chef for pizza. No freaking way. No freaking way. Anyway, so I'm nonchalant through this 1-hour interview with the HR and this Sharon Webster Tolan is her name. And I literally was dumbfounded when she says, want you to come in for a working interview. So again, at this point, I'm having a holy shift moment. Because I'm like, okay, now I've got to actually, dare I say, the shift got real. So I needed to pivot my mindset to going, how do I present and execute against something I've never experienced? Well, some of the things I wanted to share with you, again, when that shift hits the fan, there are 4 points I wanted to share with you in that regard is I, over the years of being in the trenches, I always put profit over purpose. And so if I shared any points tonight, I would tell you that one of the things that's been successful for me is I put purpose over profits instead. And I have gotten more dividends as a result of being true to myself, true to my craft, and true to my purpose, and then putting money second. One of the amazing mentors that I got to partner with was the CEO of actual Pizza Hut. This is a multimillionaire. And he would always ask me, well, Wiley, what do you really want to do? And I'm like, well, listen, I'm just trying to, put money in the bank, make sure my son has what he needs to get to college and move to the next level. I want to make sure I can retire comfortably. He's like, no, you're putting profit over purpose. And so he really galvanized in my mind. It's just absolutely crazy. He galvanized in my mind that I should have stuck to my purpose. And so I am excited because I believe my purpose is sharing, teaching, and more importantly, continuing to innovate within the food science and food innovation and culinology space. And that has really helped me become extremely successful over the past literally 5 to 6 years, whereas it took me forever when I was in the trenches in food and beverage to actually make traction. And so that was one of the points I wanted to share. Secondly, to that, it was like, when those shifts happened, up to and including this interview, I had to return back to my fundamentals. And that was the other point I wanted to make. And then I'll get into the others later. But I had to return to the fundamentals. And I can't stress enough the importance of staying true to your craft and continuing to be a growth mindset learner. And so, collegiately, we learn a lot. We can have all the degrees hanging off the wall that you can possibly think of, PhD, masters, you name it. You just pick one. But at the end of the day, if you don't continue to become a continual learner, you will find yourself up Shift Creek because you don't know how to pivot. You just don't. So I would encourage you and challenge you to be that type of continual learner. And that growth mindset matters. It absolutely does. And so anyway, back to the Yum brand story. I walk in, absolutely academia type of PowerPoint presentation, because that's the mindset I was in. Produced back to my fundamentals, produced quality product that I learned from all of my fine dining training, and got the opportunity. And I beat out literally 9 other candidates who had 20 years or anywhere from 10 to 20 years of actual R&D corporate chef experience, for the simple reason that I leaned in to, number one, that I shifted when I was supposed to, and I pivoted toward, again, purpose, and I returned to those fundamentals that put me on the competitive edge versus those other candidates. Because of that, I had a 7-year run, or 7.5, almost 8-year run with Pizza Hut, to which point that pivot was that they were pivoting toward other directions. So the economy goes south, things start happening kind of crazy. And then they're like, okay, do we really need a corporate chef? And, can't we just fall back on LTOs and other innovation that we've done 20 years ago? And they pivoted that way, and that's okay. And so I chose to exit the business. And then I pivoted to the other side of the world. Why? Because I wanted to be an avid learner. And so most recently here, prior to taking the job as the director of culinary for Main Event Entertainment, I took a job as, it was a dual role. It's imagine being a sales guy with a culinary background for IFF. International Flavors and Fragrance was a phenomenal organization. They're recognized globally as a massive player. And so I got all of these analogies about, literally being, at this point, folks, I'm up Schiff Creek. So I'm there 2 years. We hear this announcement. The email comes by and it says, hey, congratulations. IFF has just merged and or is going to purchase DuPont. And I'm like, whoa. Now they went from literally being a $7.5 billion organization to literally doubling their revenue streams overnight. And so I had to step back and ask myself, based on my background, based on my qualifications, am I putting profit over purpose? I love the job. I loved all the benefits of that job. Got to admit, as you can tell, I'm a motor mouth, so I don't necessarily mind selling, but where I'm most comfortable is really on the R&D space, and more importantly in the hospitality and the food and beverage space. And so I opted to move on, knowing full well there was going to be somebody more qualified that was going to be able to win over that executive team that's somewhere in Switzerland or New York evaluating resumes versus me allowing the opportunity to kind of sell myself. And so I opted to continue to move on at landing his job as the director of culinary for Main Event Entertainment. And so as you can tell, I was telling about the EKG type of career path. It was not static. I went from high on the hog with, again, book deals, with video deals, with all kinds of media deals. And then I pivot down to a brand new startup hotel. And I didn't even share this with you. If anybody remembers the story of Enron, we were funded by Enron when I was with the Nyla Hotel Company. So I'm like, dare I say, I'm literally balling, right? We're like, I've got money coming out my pockets and it's falling out. We had money coming out the wazoo until the Enron situation happened. And you're talking about having a holy shift moment when the executive team, as I'm one of them, sits down like, so what happened? We're broke. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean we're broke? Did you see the news? We're broke. I'm like, oh my God. Right. And so here I'm sitting with at this point, a 7-year-old kid who I've got massive plans for. I was going to freaking go to Harvard. You know how it goes. And then I'm like, okay, I've got to make a change. And so that change was to move into education. And if I could do it tomorrow, I would do it all over again. Absolutely. By the time it's over, speaking of shifting, I see myself resting comfortably in academia, teaching culinary students, exactly what I'm trying to share with you, because what I'm learning is that there's so many culinary schools now, and there's so many research and development institutions now that it can become very transactional. What we really need is, somebody with the USPA to tell folks exactly what they need to know versus what they think they want to hear. And massively important. So I lean in heavily to wanting to be a mentor. Aikido to literally just making myself accessible to share my story. So that others don't have to actually go through the situation and circumstances that I did. There was a lot of stress between those transitions. And so, again, I can continue to tell you to, again, put purpose over your profits and then return to those fundamentals that got you where you are today. But understand what got you where you are today may not get you to the next level. So be that avid learner. I've got other points, but I'm going to pause for a second and make sure I can shut the hell up for a second and let you ask some questions.
I think there are times that work is tough. The circumstance that we're in is tough, but are we actually in shift mode or just, where it's that like you should go to the next gear because you're kind of, you're getting above the 3,000 RPMs, all that stuff, or you know what I mean? Like, how do you know if you're actually at that point where you need to shift or you're just climbing a hill? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. One of the things that, I was going to get into is, I think trust your instincts. Trust your instincts. Your instincts will tell you clearly whether it is a shift moment or a ratchet up moment. And generally speaking, you'll find yourself when it's time to ratchet up that you still have control, that you're actually directing traffic at that point. But then when you're in a situation where it's really pivotal, that you need to decide whether you can ratchet up enough to fix the situation or circumstance, you'll know instantaneously whether it's a pivot point or, again, is it time to shift. And so, but it does come through experience and time. For anyone's up and coming and they're just still kind of in that middle management or climbing up into, that leadership level where you can actually exude that, the passions of your leadership. It may take a little bit of work, but as I tell you, what's the kitchen term? You'll know if you're in the shifts. So I think trust your instincts. Everyone's journey, everyone's experience is going to be a little bit different. As you can well tell, I'm full on ADHD type of dude, and like I know what my threshold is, and I also have this massive bullshit detector that will start firing off like, oh, this is the alarm's going off. This is an absolute, I'm up Shift Creek at this point. I've got to pivot. Mm-hmm. So each of your journeys is going to be uniquely different, but I would just encourage you to listen to your core versus listening to the outside influencers that are, quite frankly, are trying to have you pivot toward their success and or their situation and circumstance, but be true to your core. And that's why that purpose over profits really, really matters.
Chef, thanks for so far. It's been incredibly illuminating. Your story is really fascinating. The one thing I was kind of curious about, the IFF shift away from IFF. If you could sort of explain, because to me, it seems like almost a nice melding of your prior culinary experience and a drive for more academia. It almost seems like a decent melding to be at a flavor company. So I'm just curious sort of what the math was in your head that steered you away.
Well, honestly, what steered me away was they have a phenomenal culinary team, and dare I say, copious amounts of culinologists and food scientists and chefs who pick up job. I chose to enter the business with a primary purpose of sales, and I was able to, with my clients, be able to strap on an apron and a chef coat and demonstrate the products, goods, and services of IFF and be able to share that with them in real time, because that's what people are actually looking for. So if any of you are either in industry from a R&D perspective in a flavor house or something of that nature, there's nothing worse. And I was one of them when I was at Pizza. I could not stand the sales guy or the chefs coming in going, look at these 72 things that we can provide you. Here's some samples. And I'm like, dude, I am busy enough. You expect me to find time to figure out how to innovate around your SKU? What I'm looking for is an end-to-end solution, right? And so that's one of the reasons why I was like, okay, I want to try this, because the very thing that's driving me crazy, I believe I can fix and help others. And so I had the opportunity, and here's the irony. I came back and I literally was selling into the place I just left. And I was, it was like baked in, right? Nothing changed. I think I even kept my badge. I had access to the fourth floor, the executive level floor. Like nothing changed other than who my check was coming from. But I was able to provide end-to-end solutions. And so if I had to send you away with one takeaway, do that. Provide those end users final solutions versus giving them all of this stuff to figure out on their own. Because as you well know, we're all strapped for time. That's my reality. But yeah, you're right. I really, really enjoyed being there. I enjoyed that balance of academia. I enjoyed, being able to rub elbows with PhDs and learn from them as well. Because again, I'm coming from it from a culinary with some percentage of culinology type of mindset, but to be able to go to a subject matter expert to help me understand the type of the type of thickener or the type of binders that's going to make a sauce work, or the type of masker that if I'm using mung bean for protein, for a protein alternative, what's going to be a proper masker, and here's why. And so that's me being an avid learner and being able to pass that on for an end-to-end solution to the end user. All that does is empower them to speak intelligently about the innovation that they've created. And so, yeah, at net, I do miss it. But at the end of the day, everything for a reason, everything for a purpose. So I do enjoy being back in the trenches and being able to partner with ops people and my marketing partners and what have you, where I am today. So again, everyone's journey is a little different. But yeah, that was an EKG moment.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. If there's no other questions, I was just kind of go through some bullet points, and would love your feedback as well. If any of this stuff makes sense, as I use you all as kind of a test pilot for my presentation for IFT. But the two other points I wanted to share, and then I'll start to break those down a little bit, is point number 3 is when the shift hits the fan, is getting back to your roots. Again, after being in this industry, I've been in the game here since the earth cooled. Hopefully I come across screen looking like I'm young, but I'm not. I'm probably old as dirt. But getting back to my roots was one of those things that has always done me well. And so when, I've got all the different crazy analogies, but, as I call it, when shift gets real, and you've got to pivot and you've got to make that turn, going back to those roots. Why did I get into this industry? What did I love about it? How do I get myself inspired to get into the right headspace to be a high performer in this industry? I think all of those things matter, and falling back to your roots and then expanding upon those roots, massively important. So I would encourage you to do that as well. And then the fourth point that I wanted to make, is really that reforming and reformatting my capabilities and my relationships. And so one of the points that we talk about, me being on the educational foundation with the RCA, was talking about relationships. That translates to mentorship and reverse mentorship. And one of the things that I hear often in talking to people, it's not necessarily 40 under 40, but maybe 30 or 20 under 20, 30 under 30, is they're constantly saying, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. And you'd be amazed how people, who've been in the game about the same time or more than I have, we're looking for that reverse mentorship. What I learned in academia 100 years ago is going to be uniquely different than what you learned. And engaging the up and coming generation, the future leadership and talent of our industry is really important to us as well. And all we're trying to do is figure out how to make that connection. I've made it partnering through the RCA, being able to go to the younger generations going, okay, help me understand what you learned in your books from a culinology perspective, from a culinary perspective, so that I can begin to update my repertoire. And so that's kind of helps me build my roots. But then also, the reverse mentorship is to suggest and to challenge you all to make yourselves available to guys like us and to gals, and to gents and ladies, to engage you all to go, hey, I am actually curious. How uniquely different is your experience either in academia or in industry than when I was your age or when I was at the place you were back in the day. And so I would challenge you all to make yourself available in that manner.
Chef, can you give some examples of some of the skills?
Oh God! So I came up in a mindset of I'm a Six Sigma junkie, and that's kind of my format. A lot of people are all about the agile methodology and what have you. The hell if I know, but I break mine down into people, product, and process. And one of the things on that reverse mentorship and the mentorship was people. How I learned how to govern and manage myself as a leader via academia is uniquely different than maybe what you all might have experienced in the classroom when you were coming through college, or more importantly, when you're in the trenches in your respective jobs. And so that was one example where I literally was sat down and says, Wiley, you've got to pivot how you're leading. Because there is a massive difference between being a leader and being a manager. And no one in today's market wants to be managed. It's like the ever-changing LinkedIn conversation about people having to report to work now. At the end of the day, the average person now in our industry is like, why do you care when I get it done as long as I get it done? But the older generations are like, well, that's just how we do it. You need to report at 8 o'clock. You need to leave at 5 o'clock. The rest of us are going batshit crazy because we're like, I'm done at 3:30. Why do I have to stay here till 5? So that's one example on leadership, up to and including how people want to be communicated to, right? I'm a firm believer of I'm a one-on-one kind of guy. I hate sending any type of leadership lessons or go-dos via email. To me, it's the worst methodology for communication. But that was one other example that, again, reverse mentorship was, at one point I was using email as a way to manage people. And they were like, hey, Chef, do me a solid. Can you come talk to me? And then my mentor says, listen, stop that. Because what you're communicating is not being received in a manner that they understand. Massively pivoted and changed my perspective on how I lead. So that's just a couple of examples. And I hope that makes sense to you. Okay. To that point, that was kind of the 4 points I wanted to share. And then, so, the other playful things that I kind of took down as notes was, as I already mentioned, kind of when shift gets real. And so just for the fun of it, what I wrote out for you all was like, when shift gets real and before, your shift out of luck, followed by having a holy shift moment, divert to those bullets that I just mentioned, that purpose over profits, return to fundamentals, and so forth. To divert to those, requires us to actually give a shift, which is to say, you've got to be avid learners, and you have to, you've got to be able to pivot with the industry. One of the things that I can't share enough is the fact that our industry is not static. Just think about what we're going through coming out of COVID, where now we're all required to do 3 jobs because, the furloughs have all taken place and some have returned, others have not. And then no one has an explanation on when those are coming back. And so I can't stress to you enough that you've got to really, again, give a shift and be willing to flex flow with the business unless or until you become your own boss, meaning your own, you own your own company, which is something I'm very passionate about as well. Eventually I'll get there. It won't be tomorrow, but I most certainly will get there. But anyway, to finish that point up, this does require you to give a shift. And then when the shift happens, and when the shift gets real, you'll be prepared because you've had a growth mindset placed and you're willing to flex flow with the business so that you can actually maximize and get the return on your investment of your time and your efforts, so that you're just not fortifying everyone else, fortify yourself as well, which then takes me back to the purpose over profits, making sure that you set yourself up for success via being flexible, via being able to pivot when the talent is required to do so. And so I can't stress that enough. And that has done me well over the past 10 years, being able to, again, walk into an executive meeting with my purpose in mind, but being flexible enough to pivot to the needs of the business, because that continually makes you available and continually makes you desired as a partner to get things done in a manner that works best for the business. Hopefully that makes sense. The fourth point I wanted to share, and I've only got 2 more points, and then we can get into Q&A and then get you back to your lives and crack a Frosty or whatever you got to do. But back to the purpose over profits. Again, more fun and playful things I wanted to share was everybody needs to make money. Let's be honest. That's why what we do. Otherwise, I'd be sitting around watching my son play baseball all day and drinking single malt scotch. I wouldn't work. Right? And reading cookbooks. I don't know. But the reality is, again, everybody needs to make money. However, your purpose will always win if you commit to the plan. And so that was one of the other things that, again, my mentorship told me is I was extremely fluid. In other words, just like c'est la vie, I'll go whichever way the wind blows. And that was the biggest pivotal moment that my mentor gave to me, and was my chef. His name's Brian Henshaw. He still resides in Columbus. He's like, look, you have got to have a North Star. And so, because otherwise, how do you know where the hell you're going if you don't have a North Star? So again, probably my EKG moment and my EKG career is when I finally started to galvanize where I wanted to go, how I wanted to get there, and set timelines on when I wanted to get there. I tell you, it was exponential growth when I finally got there. And so I would encourage you to do the same, but be strategic and be that person. Again, and a play on words, be that person who, whose shifts don't stink. You've got to be able to communicate and dare I say, I have always got continual work on this regard too, because I find myself to get so passionate about stuff that I ramble, but be that avid communicator about your purpose, your point, and your trajectory. I promise you that your leadership, that who you're talking to, that you need to solicit support from, will most certainly appreciate it. There's an old expression we used to use all the time is we read cookbooks, we don't read minds. So be clear and concise on what it is your needs are. I promise you they'll appreciate it. And as such, they'll support you because you do have a plan and you've plotted it out. Fifth point, back to this return to the fundamentals. So we find ourselves stuck between being, that shift, eat, and grin, and being in shift out of luck. And that shift, eat, and grin was back to what I was saying. I was moving whichever direction the wind blows. So you just kind of tap dance your way through it. Get back to your purpose. Get back to your plotting your plan and execute that against that plan with a timeline. But don't be so maniacal that if you don't hit that timeline, that things fall apart. Be willing to flex flow based on what's happening within your sphere of influence. That'll pay you dividends, and you will find yourself not going bonkers and holding yourself accountable to false narratives. Because at the end of the day, it's not so prescriptive that it's going to begin and end the way you thought it out. So don't beat yourself up. I guess that's the point. But net, shifting in and out of luck is not positive either. But if we don't lean into our fundamentals with a growth mindset and continual learning and grow those fundamentals, it's hard to net out on where you want to go. So I'll continue to stress the same points that I've already made. My favorite part of this is I presented this before. By plotting and planning and communicating exactly what you want to do with your career path and your career choices, as well as that growth mindset, you'll pivot away from looking like a dumb shift and become that person that people will lean into and look for direction, look for mentoring, and look for purpose from you to help guide the up and coming leaders, especially of our industry.
Thanks, as always, for continuing to follow the Peas on Moss podcast. I'm holding space for the pursuit of my MBA in Sustainable Innovation at the University of Victoria, but I feel so strongly that we need to continue these conversations to help keep our knives sharp and our minds engaged in leading the future of food. Please join our conversations at the Hustlers Under 40. Check out the newsletter at peasonmoss.com.